Court.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our final live stream reflection cast from the Reopening America Schools conference
Summit.
Maybe summit. There may be a little bit of some brain buffering going on from some of us who've been really having our brains stretched over the last 3 days. I'm sure that Stephen and Janice are just absolutely worn out after doing, moving heaven and earth to do just such amazing work. It's been such a blast to learn with you from all these wonderful people, including three of our guests tonight, two screens, three people, wonderful presenters, Dr. Billy Snow and Courtney and Chris Dacos.
Dacos.
Courtney will be right here.
We're really very glad to have you here. So we've already got some people chatting with us in the chat.
Oh, awesome.
Questions, please post your questions. We'd love to hear what you have to say about what you learned, what you took away from the day. And we'd love to just kick those ideas around for a little while. So what was your big takeaway from today?
Oh, you're calling me. Wow. You
can only pick one.
I know. Okay. Do I believe I can, you know me, right? Do I believe I can learn from you? Right. At the heart of it, I think I'm going to just leave it right there. Doug Fisher, we had so many great sessions, but you told me I had to pick one, and that was right in front of me, and it sticks at the heart. So do I believe I can learn from you? And really what he was talking about is if kids don't believe that we believe in them, then it's really difficult for them to learn from us. And he showed us some videos around an example of, the non-reaction. So when we're non-reactionary or giving those positive, even those non-verbal signs to students or children, I think people in the audience were tearing up, even though it was over Zoom. TJ, you said you were. If you didn't see his session, it is streaming on Facebook Live, and I would say to go and look at that and think through that lens of, I wonder what you think when you hear that question and you see that. So continue the conversation with Stephen and I. We're going to be offering conversations with impact, and we'd like to hear back from you on some of those things. And my first question to pose to you is, what did you think when you saw that video? And about that question, do I believe I can learn from you?
Yeah, I think we talk all the time in education and have talked for years about the importance of relationships in working with kids. But I really felt like today, and it was a lot of places. Courtney, Chris, your session, and in a lot of sessions today, there were really tangible things that we could do as educators to advance those relationships. And it's not just this sort of like fuzzy, nice, we need to have relationships with kids, but really like, here are concrete actions you can take to build relationships with kids. And I think that's a really exciting thing for us to think about.
One of the things that we always advocate for with educators is to use a practice that was structured and developed by Clayton Cook at the University of Minnesota, which is called EMR, Establish, Maintain, and Restore. And it's a great exercise to go through to understand which students you actually have a connection with, to understand which students that you may need to actually spend a little more time with.
You're talking about the tree exercise?
Yeah, the tree exercise. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. And it's a very simple exercise to go through, but also having an ongoing checklist or just a ongoing, what am I trying to say, list of students, making sure that you're keeping track when you're connecting with them, checking it up against the roster to make sure when you've made a contact with that student, making notes about wonders that you may have, questions you may have that are personal and unique to that student next time when you go back around. Yeah, it's an incredible practice, and we've seen it's been very effective.
Yeah, the exercise that he's talking about is where so establish, maintain, and restore is kind of a foundational set of practices and restorative practices that we utilize. But this particular exercise, you take a class roster and you have a tree template, and you essentially assign an apple to every student on the roster, and you put students at the bottom of the tree that you have a strong relationship with, and you put students in the middle that you connect with somewhat, and then the students at the top are the ones that maybe you haven't yet really established a relationship with, and then the teachers reflect on, well, who's at the top of that tree, and that's where you can start to
and who's at the bottom.
Right, and what do I notice about the students that I connect with more easily? What do I notice about the students that I'm struggling to connect with? Sometimes when a school staff goes through this exercise, there's trends across the staff in terms of who's at the top of the tree. You know, sometimes it's boys in elementary. Sometimes it's a conversation about being more students with special needs or students that are served by ELL. So it's a very tangible way, especially in a secondary setting, for teachers to then say, okay, here's a couple of kids that I'm going to really focus my energy on getting to know better.
I've noticed that exercise is kind of amplified in secondary settings also, because those teachers have such limited time with those engagements because of the schedules and everything. And so that bias, if there is one there, kind of gets amplified.
What a great connection with Keith Myatt's work around cultural proficiency, and you know, Keith really caused us to look in the mirror and really think about how well do we know and understand not only our own culture that we bring in, but the culture. Every student has their own culture, and the culture that they bring in. And I love that the Apple, whatever the activity was called. What was it called again?
Oh, we call it the tree activity.
Okay, the tree activity, but to do that through the lens of even cultural proficiency and through the lens of culture, and do I understand, and that correlation, I wonder if I have more of a better connection with the ones that I maybe connect more culturally with than the ones that I don't. It'd be interesting to see that connection, but it's a great connection.
And anecdotally, I think that's absolutely what we see, having done the exercise with a lot of different school staffs. And it makes sense. All of us, we're drawn to those who we identify with the most. Yeah. And so
familiar is easy.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes sense to us, right? So
it makes sense to us. Yeah. And it's easy, and there's less effort in that process.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I could add on a little bit to that, I think that one of the things that's powerful about that is, you know, in leading school turnaround work in schools predominantly filled with children of color, one of the things that, you know, is powerful during data meetings is to take that data wall and put their picture on it on their own cards, and do that same activity with those garage sale stickers, and just have teachers go around the room and put those green stickers on the kids they know a lot about and have relationships with. And you end up finding a lot about which kids are connecting with teachers, and then have a purposeful plan for how to connect with those students who don't have any of those green stickers on their tabs. It helps you to really have some purposeful action plans around building relationships instead of just focusing on the numbers.
Yeah. I like how you brought that back to those action steps, Billy, because knowledge is one thing, but we actually have to do something with it. And I think that was something that came out loud and clear in the sessions today. And I guess just through the whole 3 days, we are just so thrilled with how all of our thought leaders, colleagues, friends, and came with actions, right? When we asked people to join us in this gift to educators, we didn't want them to come with logistics. Here's how to do Zoom. Here's some materials you can use. But they really answered the call about what is the human element that is happening so we can move forward and acknowledge where educators are right now, and that we have our own hearts to take care of, and there is hard work ahead of us. And before we went live, we were talking about one of the things at Impact Learning and Leading Group. We really believe that educators do the hard work, and it is the hard work. And one of the things that we've talked about with Dr. Keith Myatt this morning and with TJ and Billy was that we all know health-wise, we don't take care of our heart, it deteriorates our health. We end up with disease and our kidneys start failing. We can have all these things that really make us sick. And we think about if we take care of our heart, then we can have space and a place to do this cognitive load and take on this hard work that we're going to face. And so we were really thrilled that all of our presenters acknowledged where we are, but also had inspirational and actionable things that we can do, because together we're better. And we do have a new way of looking at things. I mean, the STEM session this afternoon, I'm telling you, because it was the last one, it wasn't like the just attended, but I think on our Facebook Live, it's going to get a lot of action. They had practical, solid advice, things that any teacher, any parent, any grandparent, babysitter can take and move forward with.
Absolutely.
Exciting.
Yeah, and I love that, in all of this, that one of the things that I've seen over the last 3 days is that a lot of where we are as educators going into the next 6, 12, 18 months is very uncomfortable because we like to be certain about things. We like to write our lesson plans and all that sort of stuff. Jackie made an excellent comment in the chat. I just want to sort of bring it up. We're in a space now of being much more required to be adaptive and to letting our failures be a part of this learning process. And sometimes I know in positions of trauma that we're all in, that can be hard to do, right? We want certainty in those times, but that we have to both, as you said, Janice, we have to do this for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can help our students also take the time to wade out into that uncertainty gently, and make that progress. Because otherwise, we're all going to be sitting on go, and we're never going to get anywhere. And we've got to get somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when I was reflecting back on all the things that I learned during the sessions and just the things that are happening in our country right now, one of the things that I can synthesize over the 3 days is that if we decide and we choose to go back to the previous normal, then we are going back to a normal that didn't work for most of our kids.
Right.
We're choosing to go back to a normal that worked for, honestly, if I'm being vulnerable here, worked for kids that look like me. And if we choose to be able to go back and create a new normal and listen to kids and be able to actually talk to them about how they learn and what they want to learn and what their teachers need, we have an opportunity right now with 6 months off of school to create a new normal. We're always begging for more time. We're always asking for more time. We're always making excuses and saying, well, we can't do this and we can't do that because of time. We have time right now to create a new normal that is equitable and that is futuristic and that makes us prepare our kids for their future, not mine, not my grandparents, not anybody on this screen, but for their future. And that was really something I got from every presenter that I listened to over the course of the 3 days.
Thank
Preach
you.
on.
That was great.
What I was saying, I was thinking, how many times have we been in conversations where we have said to each other, man, if we could just stop everything. If we could just stop everything and restructure, and here it is. Here's that opportunity. Rethink about what it actually looks like. What is the purpose of it? What is the purpose of education? I think we've kind of like moved away from originally what the idea was to actually human development and creating citizens in the community. It's often when you see it like in state constitutions, it's about developing citizens for the community. Well, are we doing that right now? I'm not sure we are. I think we are so focused after a nation at risk on more or less fragmenting everything apart, pushing to science is hard, which is great. I'm not suggesting we don't learn sciences, but it's been science and math.
Psychologist, you love science.
We're always talking about evidence and science. No, but it's true. I think that as you said, Billy, that the reality is our system hasn't been working for the majority of our students. And I mean, if you can look at a lot of indicators like the NAEP results. I bring this up all the time, but it matters. If you look at just this past year, I think it was 35% of fourth graders that were reading at standard.
Yeah.
So that means 65% of fourth graders are not yet reading the way they need to. And we know statistically that if they're not reading in fourth grade, they're not going to catch up. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but our systems are not well structured right now to help them get to standard in the first place, and then help them if they're not at that point. Mm-hmm. And I think the whole concept, I was watching, I think Westover, his presentation from today, and I appreciated him talking about the fact that I think the emphasis, especially on standardized testing, is thankfully over. I really hope it is. I don't know that we can move forward in a way that relies on that anymore for a variety of reasons. And we know that that emphasis on standardization has really pushed, as Chris was just describing, a very siloed way of our instruction. And so not that I don't think that there was a lot of good effort put into the Common Core state standards, not that I don't think there's value to us knowing what we teach students. And we all know that that structure has not been successful for the majority of our kids. So what a great opportunity we have to rethink about what we do.
Push towards project-based learning.
Well, and things
toward, you know.
And know that we can engage students. And I think one of the most powerful things that we've experienced in having conversations with our colleagues and with teachers around this is that students are engaging in the learning that they want to right now.
Right. A colleague of ours, her son taught himself how to play guitar. And yet he has yet to open up his English class.
Well, she was saying he doesn't attend his English class, but he's taught himself how to play guitar, and he's really good.
It's brilliant.
Not that we don't want kids to go to English class, but I think you know,
what was relevant to him?
Right, what he's going to dive into because he's interested in it, and I think one of the things that's really heartbreaking right now that we're trying to help our school districts and especially secondary administrators and teachers understand is everyone's beating themselves up because on average, half of their kids are not showing up to those virtual sessions. And we know that it's not true distance learning. It's replacement teaching that we're doing right now.
Great point today.
So I think that's another important thing is that we're not really truly, because distance learning should be a blend of in-person and virtual, and it should be thought out and intentional. And what has happened is we all had to just start doing it. So I think that's the other opportunity we have this summer is to pause and really think about, well, how can we work better? What have we already? Yeah, we've done a few months of this. We've all learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah. So we were in this shutdown, sudden. Like Billy, you talked about this, how your kids went to spring break and then they didn't go back. So we didn't have any preparation. And I think what we were thinking, Stephen and I, when we put this together, was to give people hope and to help people think about reopening with intention and purpose, and to implement well whatever it is we choose to move forward with. Because in what we really feel like all of our speakers kind of gave that opportunity to latch onto something that you can move forward with. TJ, you had a couple things that you had mentioned that you thought were really powerful.
Oh gosh, and now we've talked about so many other things. I don't know if I'll even.
Stephen probably has one. I know it tricked my brain. Yeah.
But I mean, I do think that just thinking about and Chris, what you were just talking about, kids are always learning, right? We may perceive that they're not learning because they're not learning what we've designed to learn, but kids are always learning. And and I think about Angela's presentation today about literacy, that if you model the desire to learn and you model a real curiosity about things, whether it's literacy or anything else, you have an opportunity to engage these kids in a way that in sort of the traditional sense of we're going to throw these 30 children into a room because this is what the building is designed for and this is what this day is designed for, all of those sorts of considerations, when they're suddenly not as important, you have an opportunity to really meet kids where they are. And if they're not showing up for your class, well, why? Why are 50% of these people not doing it? That's important data. That's not just a thing. One of the people in the chat said something about, she was talking about the Ames presentation at the end of the day, and her CTE teacher saying, well, my kids don't have a bandsaw or something in their class or at their house. How am I going to teach them? Everybody's got something they can learn with at home, and we may not all have the same things, but and now I can't remember who it was, but someone over the last 3 days was talking about being able to meet students with the materials that are culturally relevant to them and let them use those to develop mastery of these really important learning targets. Man, that's such an opportunity that we are limited by when all of a sudden, well, we all have the same tangrams that were purchased for us and are in the classroom. Let's use those. So there's a real opportunity here to think about these culturally relevant practices by meeting kids in their culture, in their homes.
Absolutely.
Margine has a statement there that says, "This is not a time to decide if you're an effective teacher. We're in crisis, we're grieving." And you know, what we know today, and I say this all the time, what we know today doesn't make yesterday wrong, it makes tomorrow better. Mm-hmm. What this is the time for is the time to start planning to be effective.
Yeah.
And because we do have this little moment, this little blip here to kind of hit that reset button and really take the things that we know are effective, the systems, the policies, the procedures, the practices, the belief systems that impact learning, all of those things that go into what makes a classroom great, and hit that reset button and start to do that right and well. And I think if there's one message I heard from today is that those relationships are critical. Pay closer look at those relationships, but take the time and just stop and pause and go, how do we do this right? And be okay with letting go of what didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, and really, you know, one of the things that fascinated me about schooling in general for forever is that, you know, school systems tend to be additive in nature, right? Like let's put another ornament on the tree. We really like this one, but we got to keep all the other ornaments on the tree as well. And Ken talked about this earlier today, and I think it was a central theme that we can take this as an opportunity for some winnowing, some paring down to those things that are really crucial. I talk about my own math experience a lot as a learner that, you know, when I was going through the school system, and this was obviously way before Common Core, but I mean, when I was going through the school system, math was a series of tasks to complete. And my ability to complete those tasks measured whether I was quote unquote good or bad at math. And because I was a perfectionist kid, and because I, you know, was kind of raised by helicopter parents and that sort of stuff, that, you know, the second I started to struggle, I decided I was bad at math. And it sort of destroyed my ability to enjoy experiencing it. So now, you know, here I am, you know, very much an adult. It's been years since I've taken a math class. And I'm watching this stupid show called Devs on Hulu. I watch it because the guy that played Ron Swanson is in it, and I like that show. So it's this like crazy thing about quantum physics. Now, I'm never going to be a quantum physicist, but it's incited in me a curiosity about those sorts of things that has led me to dive deeper into math concept. I mean, my friends make fun of me because I got all this free time and I'm doing things like taking classes on Khan Academy on high school trigonometry, just because I want to learn these things now. But it's so much less structured. It's so much less tracked. It's so much less driven by my ability to go from this class to this test to this class, because that's the way the schedule is designed. All of those things don't have to happen again. We don't have to make them happen again, just because that's the way it's always been. Why don't we give these kids an opportunity to really start with that curiosity and then backwards map to the things that they need to know?
Right. Absolutely.
In quantum physics, Brian Greene's Elegant Universe.
Love it.
It's great read. It's fun.
Yeah.
Blow your mind.
Hey, TJ, I'm curious about something. Dr. Snow yesterday talked really just a great piece about equity, and you really knocked it out of the park. How did today's sessions inform the work that you talked about yesterday? What were the connections that you saw between your presentation and the presentation of the presenters today, that the presenters gave today? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that occurred to me as I listened to speakers and have processed my own experience is that the layers have been peeled back about the education system and equity, that each one of the speakers in one way or another was able to, even if they didn't name it specifically, was able to talk about the gaps that have been exposed, the layers that have been revealed. And then I think about my own family, and I think about, and I'm pretty reflexive, but I think about that my children during this time they've not talked about any a school assignment or any math worksheet or anything that was uploaded onto Google Classroom. What they have talked about, though, is they've talked about politics, they've talked about the virus, they've talked about real life, and we've eaten dinner together for the first time every night in years. And previous work schedules for myself and my wife were very busy, traveling a lot. She's a teacher, all that kind of stuff. But we've eaten together every single night since March 9th, I think it is now. And I feel really guilty that we didn't do it before. But one of the things that it's exposed is that on a professional level, as I'm learning over and over and over about the equity gaps that exist, I'm also learning that most of the stuff that even my own kids have gone through in education, the worksheets, the assignments, or whatever, is not what they remember. They remember the relevant projects. They remember the experiences. We're talking about real life now, and what I hope happens from everything I learned over the last 3 days, I hope it corresponds with what I'm also learning in my own family. That we can't go back to just worksheets and grades. These kids can actually solve problems about viruses and global warming and and voter suppression and racism that's going on with the death of George Floyd and all the things that are happening. These kids can actually solve these problems if we give them a chance to talk about something real and not just a grade in the grade book. And I think that over the course of the 3 days that you put together an amazing lineup of people that like addressed every possible issue and then made me every night connect to what's going on in my own household. And that's what I hope everybody else got.
Thank you. That's great. And I thank you for bringing up the grading thing. We had Ken O'Connor with us this morning to launch the morning, and he did such a great job about talking about assessment and grading. And, you know, he's world renowned, been in many, many countries, and highly respected. And it was like a conversation this morning with him. And he came, he said, I'm going to use a scattergun approach. And he meant that I'm going to give you all something that everybody can leave with something. And it was thought-provoking and practical at the same time, right? And kind of like, I want to say it's sort of silly, but it was like a warm blanket. I mean, he really offered this opportunity to think about how we can move forward and seize the opportunity that we have ahead of us to think about how we really use that work. And the other, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, if I could just chime in real quick, just to recap on something that Billy, you're saying as well. Janice and I, when we close out our meetings, we have a reflective. We meet all the time, and when we close out our meetings, we close out with, what did we learn together? Even if it's an hour meeting, we ask ourselves, how are we different than when we came in the room together as a result of our time spent together? And after these 3 days, I'm different than I was 3 days ago because of what I heard over the course of these 3 days. I'm not the same human being, and I agree with you. It's not only professionally but personally, and I think that's what we have to do, is to just have that kind of reflective pause and go, how am I better and how am I different as a result of what's happened and as a result of what we're learning and what we've learned, so that I can go back and have an even greater impact with the students that we serve. So thank you for saying that, because I think it was a great reminder of how much this was a reflection. This is an opportunity to look in the mirror and say, how am I different and how do I be different as a result?
To build off what Dr. Snow was describing as far as his children's engagement right now, and it reminded me of when I was teaching students with emotional behavior disorders and students who have had a series of failed experiences in school would get excited and invested in service learning projects. Service learning projects being that they've identified a need in the community, they research that need, they learn about that need, and then they provide a service to the community to meet that need. And I had students who who have been arrested multiple times. Kids really struggling in life and seeking some path of identity in life, and completely disconnected from the community, completely disconnected from school. Identifying things like in Seattle, if you bought a piece of property, on the title, it states a person of color cannot own this property. So my students got really upset about that. They got really angry about it, and I asked them, so what can we do? What can we do to make this change? And they identified what they could do. They decided to learn about that process. How did that occur? How to get that process, how to get that removed? What legislators actually contact? They actually had a state legislator come to our dumpy little portable and meet with us and debate the issue. And it was incredible.
Cool.
They got involved in projects on how do we clean up the Duwamish River, which is a Superfund site in Seattle. And going into the community and teaching the community about what the impact is in the community and what type of like vegetation you can plant within your property to actually remove toxins. So it was really fascinating to see them get excited, actually walk a foot taller when they're doing this, actually have a sense of self-importance and raise their head high within their own community.
Yep, it's true.
Absolutely. And I remember I told a story, I think, in the session about my student Markavion that I mentored, and he started with 16 office referrals the year before we started the transformation zone,
right,
and went to 0, and now he's going to college on a scholarship, etc. And I remember taking him to home one day, and we were talking about like power plants and stuff like that, and I was like, why is that power plant in your neighborhood? And he didn't understand it, and he didn't know what I was asking. And I was like, well, why isn't it in mine? And I'm trying to promote thinking instead of like just telling him what I think. And it took so much engagement to get him to process a power plant leads to pollution, pollution leads to cancer, and that it's not in my neighborhood. And it was such a powerful discussion. And he was also one of the kids that we took to Atlanta to visit the Martin Luther King Center and Civil Rights Museum and so forth. And I just think about that those real experiences that kind of change people's lives and build relationships and teach us that these children that we encounter and teach every day, they're deserving of the absolute best that we have to give them, and they're deserving of opportunities, and that we have to fill the gaps where the system has failed. And I think that's one of the other things that we heard over the 3 days is when we're in a literacy session, we're talking about how to fill the gaps. When we're in a session with, Anita Archer or Anthony Muhammad or Dr. Fullen, we're talking about what drives kids and what drives systemness and system improvement. And what I heard over and over and over again was relationships, relevance, connecting, and filling the gaps. I don't need the same thing that Markavion does, but it doesn't mean Markavion doesn't get to have it. Right. And I have to do whatever I can to make sure Markavion gets it.
Yeah. And don't overcomplicate it. And I think that was Jay's message, right?
I was just going to say that.
And don't overcomplicate it. We don't have to make it that difficult.
Yeah, Jay talked about 4 key drivers, and you're really reminding me of that, Billy. He talked about clarity of focus, right? Shared leadership, which is one of the things with our work, Steve and I, we always say the implementers need to have a voice. We need to have them at the table as we design anything that we're working on, because they're the ones who are going to be able to anticipate and see the barriers and the problems. When we don't have their voice at the table, we design things and then we roll it out and we deploy it and we wonder, it didn't work, and then we abandon. So we don't want to do this adopt and abandon. And if we have those implementers at the table and in the design, it's not that they're the only voice, but they need to be there to help, because they're the ones doing that frontline work, and they can help us anticipate what barriers we need to remove or things we need to incorporate. And also we would include them to have an iterative process, right? So they can feed back. And that was that continuous improvement that Jay talked about. And Stephen and I have that in our impact cycle. We really want people to do an iterative process where the system is feeding back exactly what's happening. So then we can make course corrections. And as we go to reopen, we're going to face these things where we're going to put, if you want to plant a flag, let me tell you people, it's going to be in the sand. It's going to move. And we have to be willing to hold on to that flag together and listen to the people that are on the front lines and have that voice of implementation there. And one of the other pieces that Jay had in his quadrants, which we're really aligned closely with Jay, is that collective expertise. And we have that a culture of collaboration. And we heard from Stephanie Height about collective efficacy, and she joined us last night. And we had Doug Fisher this afternoon talking beautifully about what that might manifest like in a classroom. So those 4 pieces, and along with, including that implementation team and an iterative process, we think that we can move forward, even if a flag is planted in the sand, because together we can hold it up.
Hey, TJ, can I make a suggestion? I know we're at about time, I think. Can I make a suggestion that we close with so everyone share one piece of how are you different? How are you different today than when we started this 3 days ago?
I'd love to do that, but before we do that, I want to make sure that we get to continue to make tomorrow better, to quote you. And so I want people to have an opportunity to just remember how they can stay engaged with Impact Learning and Learning, and make sure that you guys continue to be a part of this work as we go forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, Janice has been talking about it all day long. We don't want this conversation to stop. We think it's a powerful conversation. We are going to start our conversations with Impact, and it does have a double meaning. We are going to be inviting the speakers that spoke today and other speakers to continue these conversations, and we will publicize those so that people can participate and be a part of the ongoing dialogue about what does this look like when we reopen, and what do we need to continue to think about, and how do we need to be different than when we shut down just a few months ago?
And I'm gonna make you answer your question next. But before I do that, I do want to just give a quick plug for what we're offering, which is, so Sydney's main purpose is teacher growth. So we have these questions about how do we support students. We want to think about how will we continue to support teachers, because there's a lot of skill development that needs to take place. So we're doing a similar event to what you've done, a completely free, completely virtual online conference, June 29th and 30th. I'll put a link to this page in the chat. We have Elena Aguilar, Justin Bader, many other people, but also practitioners in the field talking about innovative ways. So this is a conference that is designed around the idea of answering these 12 themes. So just responses to these themes. So this is not just a call to join us. Like I said, it's a free conference. You're welcome to join us, but also if you have ideas on this, we'd love for you to present. We'd love for you to join these. So right here on this same page is an opportunity for you to be a presenter at this conference. You'll be able to do it just like you've seen over the last few days, a very similar experience, and we're excited about that. So please continue the conversation, not just with one another, but with all of us over the next few months, as we maybe take a little time to pause, and then really get invigorated for planning for the coming year. So Stephen, you have to since you asked the question, you have to answer it first.
What's funny too is when I do ask that question, no matter what group I'm in, I'm always the last one.
He does that on purpose.
That's right. The question is, how are we better today than when we came in the room 3 days ago? I have a lot more hope about what we can accomplish together than Janice and I have been struggling through this pandemic and thinking about the best ways to support schools and school systems, and that's our passion, and to support the teachers that love and care for those students. And we were quiet for a little bit because we didn't want to be part of the noise. We just wanted to just watch and see what was taking place. And we knew that this was an opportunity to reset. And I'm better because we knew that this was an opportunity to reset, and I think we proved it. And so I think our presenters all demonstrated that there's a way to do it. There's these things that we need to think about, and we can reset. And so I have a tremendous amount of hope about America's schools and what America's schools can be as a result of the discussions we've had today and reopening in the fall. So that's how I'm better.
Great. So we're going to go counterclockwise around the little picture. So Dr. Snow, how are you better?
Yeah, I'm better because I got to geek out about some educational heroes that I actually cited in my dissertation. So being able to interact with them and learn from them, I think was very validating. And then I think that I'm also better because it helps to reaffirm my mission and my calling. I'm a very mission-driven, heart-driven person. And when I think about the experiences I've had, and I even think about, like, as a superintendent, I got to where I had a student roundtable and I had students help me deliver PD, and I had moved to be, over the course of the years, very focused on student choice and student voice and helping them lead. I think it helps to confirm that that's the right place to be, and that I'm not preparing kids for my past. I'm preparing them for their future. And because I was able to learn from everybody over the course of the 3 days, I feel blessed.
Well, I'll tell you that going into the last 3 days, I'll be honest, I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this, but Monday, even with the long weekend, I was feeling pretty beaten down by life, and just because life. And I'm reminded now, and I told this story yesterday before we went live, and then I didn't tell it when we were live, but I'm a proud Houstonian, right? And we've lived through several pretty big watershed moments, literally, over the last few years. And I think about Harvey and how that had such a big impact on our community. And, it was a catastrophe, just like this is a catastrophe. And in those moments, it's so easy to say, oh, it's over, or, oh, it's terrible, or look at all these awful things that are happening. But when we rebuild from those moments, we have an opportunity to rebuild something better. And after these 3 days, I've thought, gosh, there has been so much destruction and there's been so much interruption, but this is such an opportunity for us to say, well, we've ripped out this road, let's build a better one. And I think that's a real exciting opportunity for us as an educational community. So Courtney, Chris, what about you?
I'm just taking in what you just said.
So I think we were able to participate a bit today. Unfortunately, we were back-to-back meetings the last 2 days, and so we're really joining the conference this evening, to be quite honest.
We watched a few things.
We watched, after our presentation today, we were able to watch some of the sessions from today, and we definitely will intend to watch a lot more, especially hearing you guys talk about sessions. I'm really eager to listen to a lot more of them. But listening to the conversation just now and also looking at about 3 or 4 different sessions today, I think I feel really validated kind of what I'm hearing other folks say in terms of thinking outside the box and really reimagining education has always been our stance. And yet it sometimes can feel, I don't want to say lonely necessarily, but it can feel like you're kind of pushing up against, and all of us have been in different ways, right? We've been pushing against this system it's a monolith, it's a beast in terms of how these structures we've been teaching the same way for 200 years. And so the idea that so many people were eager to be a part of this learning because they also want to rethink it is really exciting and really validating. And so I'm feeling very hopeful and feeling less alone in wanting to support our students with what we know that they're so capable of doing, and loving that we now have the opportunity to collectively focus on how that can be better.
Love that.
It's funny, I was thinking same thing about feeling isolated. We were in Seattle. We worked in Snohomish County, where the first detected case of COVID was. In January, we were actually freaking out here because we knew this was going to spread, and so we have been feeling very isolated for a while, literally, because in our neighborhood also our bridge is cutting us off from the rest of the city.
We're on an
so
island that
we literally feel
right
isolated. And in the work, absolutely, in that Sisyphean effort that you're just pushing this rock up the hill, and it just feels like it's rolling back down so often, and you keep getting back behind it and pushing it. I was really inspired to hear so many connections, even names that are being mentioned. Like it seems like we're all 1 or 2 degrees separated, and I feel it's really nice to have that. That sense of community in the work on trying to reconfigure schools and go back to the purpose of what defining the purpose of school is. And I appreciate being part of this effort. And to do a shameless plug as well, we have a conference as well at the end of June, into July 2nd. I believe it's June 29th, July 2nd. And it's on trauma-informed MTSS. And
healing-centered practice, really focused on similar questions that you guys have been answering. I think our content's really going to focus on how do we rethink and how do we do that through the lens of mental health as well as the arts and equity, and really in partnership with families. So we're excited for folks to join us. Unfortunately, we have a little overlap in days. So
and we love
That's
Justin.
okay. It's virtual. It's all on the internet. You can do things from anywhere.
We love Justin.
Yeah, because of their work. So.
We love Principal Center Radio.
Yeah. But with our conference as well, it isn't free, unfortunately. We have some costs involved, but it's affordable for what you're getting access to, and it's 4 days worth of content that you'll have access to afterwards as well. So we're very hopeful.
And a very important topic right now, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, we are
right.
very.
Janice, you get the last word.
Wow, it's a lot to follow up.
And you deserve it.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm grateful and I'm empowered. I think the word that comes when I think about the 3 days, I feel empowered. We heard from so many people, from Anita and Jim and Michael Fullen and Dr. Billy Snow and Angela and Jay. And I mean, the list, Doug, it just goes on. And the fact that everyone would want to come together collectively and collaboratively to serve empowers me. And I'm going to be vulnerable because we're in right. And this is a small audience, right now. Stephen is the only person here who knows. The week that Stephen and I decided to do this, I had to have. I'm sitting in the room in the chair I'm sitting in now. I had to have a service for my father. He passed away in Michigan, in Detroit, and I'm in Texas. Actually, my husband booked a flight for me on the Saturday when we found out that he was sick. And we looked around and I called the hospital again. He said, "Are you going to be able to get in the hospital?" I'm like, no. And I'm like, how am I going to Uber and where am I going to stay and what's going to happen? But we got through it and Stephen was there for me. And that was, it was a hard time. Everybody's having all these hard times, but I was thinking he would be so proud. But now I can say, I think through this last few weeks, I'm getting to that point where he is proud. And I wanted to take this moment to dedicate this conference to him because he was all about, he always said, Janice, the first thing is you're always a teacher. And he said that when I was like 10. So he's here and watching over. And I want to thank Stephen for giving me the grace of the time. I'm like, I'm good tomorrow. And he said, maybe take it a day. And really that Thursday, then we thought about doing this. So I feel empowered and grateful. And I want to put a shout out to my daddy out there. And thank you everyone for joining us in this journey. And we hope you feel empowered too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you all very, very much. And please stay connected with all of us. We know that if nothing else, we all come out of this as a stronger community and we have an opportunity to really move forward and enact real change. So Janice, Stephen, Billy, Courtney, Chris, everyone who's here, everyone who's been here for the past 3 days, thank you so much. And and we'll see you on the other side.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. So, thank
Everyone.
you. Thanks, TJ.